Hello everyone, thank you for attending my brief. Sergeant First Class Chase. I'm Specialist Wemhoff. Today I'm going to be discussing building resiliency. It's a topic I think is very important. It's an important attribute to being a soldier, a service member, serving in the military, and also I think it's a very important topic to be able to be discussed for your civilian life as well. We're going to be going over the introduction. We're going to be discussing the importance of building resiliency. We're going to be discussing some mental exercises, some things that you can actively do to build your mental resiliency. How physical exercise plays a key component in your resiliency. And then I'm going to summarize everything, and then I'm going to take some questions afterwards. So why do we need resiliency? Resiliency is very important because we are often called upon to accomplish mission. Now, more often than not, these missions are going to be faced with some sort of challenge, whether it's small or big. Not all challenges are necessarily going to be big. So we need it to be able to accomplish the mission. So what is it? Well, resiliency is this. Resiliency is the ability to face an obstacle, a challenge, something that stands in our way of completing our mission, and the ability to overcome it, mentally think through it, use critical thinking skills to accomplish your mission, despite no matter how tired you are, no matter how little food you've gotten, no matter how physically exhausted you are. It's that ability to tell yourself, I will drive on. So how does it affect our team? So let's say that we have an individual on our team that does not have resiliency, and he plays an important part. He's supposed to be playing an important part in accomplishing the team's mission. If he does not have resiliency and he is faced with a challenge, he could potentially not accomplish his part of the mission. So now the whole team has failed the mission. So how does it affect the Army? So if we were to take that team and scale that up to the big Army, that's how it can affect the Army, the big Army. So if this member did not accomplish his part of the mission, so now the team failed. Now this team failing has a cascade effect all the way up to the big Army, because someone else's mission was reliant upon them accomplishing their mission. And then two teams up the road was reliant upon the team ahead of them to accomplish their mission. And so on and so forth. And this whole domino effect continues all the way up. Now the Army could potentially fail their big mission. So now how do we identify it? Being able to identify it is important because I think it helps you to identify those soldiers that are able to carry on despite no matter how difficult a situation is. So how do you identify it? You identify it by you have those soldiers that are going to be able to kind of push forward no matter how crummy their situation is. Those are the soldiers that you give them a task and they will find a way to accomplish it no matter what. So now we're going to dive into how do we build some resiliency. So we can start with some mental exercises. This is something that you can do anytime, anywhere. Just kind of giving yourself a moment when you start to catch yourself going down into the rabbit hole. So we can start by having some self-awareness. Self-awareness is important to have because this essentially is saying that I have a problem. When you have self-awareness, what you're doing is you're going to start catching yourself. Okay, I'm now thinking to myself that I'm not going to be able to do this. Oh, this sucks. Oh, this is crummy. I don't want to do this. All those words, those negative words, have an impact and can be very detrimental to accomplishing your mission. So you need to be able to have some self-awareness. So once you have some self-awareness, you say, okay, I am now taking control of my mind. When you take control of your mind, you are now saying to yourself, I am in control of my thoughts, I'm in control of my feelings, and I am now going to control what my output is going to be. So now once you've taken control of your mind, you can start to have yourself a more positive attitude. You can have a more positive spin on things. You can start to think to yourself, hey, once we get through this, I got a hot meal coming. Once I get through this, I'm going to get to sleep for another 16, 17 hours. All those little things, if you start to think to yourself, I can continue to do this, then that is going to be very vital in you accomplishing your mission. So now that you've had a more positive attitude, the final part of this process is you can start taking steps to more actively figure out a way, critically think, and accomplish what you need to get done. And something that is very, very helpful in doing this is establishing SMART goals. SMART goals are an excellent tool to be able to take a very large problem and scale it down to little bite-sized chunks. The easiest way to think about this, let's say you're running a marathon. Let's say you're running a marathon. And you're running this marathon. And you think to yourself, oh, I got a whole marathon to run. But if you develop some SMART goals and you think, okay, I'm just going to run a half a mile. Okay, now I'm going to run another half a mile. And you continue this process over and over and over again. Now eventually you're then up to a half a mile. And then you're up to a whole mile. And now you're up to a half marathon and you're halfway there. By establishing SMART goals, as I said previously stated, it's taking a big problem and taking it down into little bite-sized chunks. And it makes a very seemingly impossible task much more manageable and feels like it's much more realistic to accomplish. So how else can we build on it? Physical exercise. Physical exercise is an excellent tool. It's something that we use every day in the Army to be able to fortify ourselves in our mind. So how is this? So what this does is when we are exercising, essentially what we are doing is we are exercising our mind. So what's happening is every time you push yourself a little bit further into an area that you previously did not think that you could go, you're essentially building resiliency in your mind. Every time that you run a little bit further, you run a little bit faster, you lift a little bit more weight. All these things that you previously did not think that you could do before, that you've now accomplished, you've now built a little bit of resiliency. There's an old mantra that I grew up listening to a lot that said, train your mind and your body will follow. So by continuously exercising, you are training your mind. You're making your mind a lot more resilient, and you're making yourself more comfortable with the uncomfortable. So what does science say about it? Science does back up physical exercise with building our resiliency. There was a study done a few years ago that was very simple, but yet very effective. They took rats. They put rats in one cage, and then they put rats in a second cage. When they put these rats in the first cage, these rats were very sedentary. They were fed, they were watered, and that was it. They were very happy. They lived a relatively stress-free life. So then they took the rats in the second cage and they gave them an exercise wheel and they monitored their exercise activity. And after a period of 7 days, they took the rats from the sedentary cage and they took the rats from the active cage and they induced a stress upon them. And this stress was cold water. And time after time again, the rats from the sedentary cage did not handle that stress as well from the active cage. Upon further research, they studied the brainwaves and the activity in the rats, and what they were able to find was that the rats that were in the active cage were having a hormone released into the brain every time they exercised that prevented stress from being induced upon the brain. This effect can be seen in humans as well, but it has to be over a period continuously, day after day. This can't be a process that is done once a week, once every 2 weeks. This process needs to be done very rigorously, continuously, and very periodically. So to summarize, we've talked about why do we need resiliency, how to identify it, how it affects our team, and how it affects the big picture. We discussed exercise and its effect on resiliency. And then we've discussed also taking control of your mind. At this time, do I have any questions? Thank you, and that concludes my brief.